from a small, powerless kid to an absolute monster that can destroy anything in its path. These are all 7 of Gon's forms in Hunter x Hunter, and let's start with his base form. At the beginning of the story, Gon was no different from other kids, except that he was more athletic and had keen senses. That is why, as soon as he grew older, Gon decided to set out on a journey to find his missing father, who was a pro hunter. All Gon knew was that his father once left and never came back, which wasn't much to go on. So Gon decided to leave Whale Town and head out to become a pro hunter himself, which he believed would eventually help him find his dad. Hunter exams Gon. On his way to the exam, Gon bumped into 2 interesting fellows. The first one was 𝐬𝐬, a dude whose only goal in life was to earn money. And the other one was a beautiful girl named 𝐵𝐸𝐴, who was actually a guy. Jokes aside, 𝐵𝐸𝐴, unlike 𝐬𝐬, had a real goal. He wanted to become a pro hunter to get revenge for his people, who were massacred by the Phantom Troop. So to become pro hunters, all the candidates had to pass a few tests. The first one was an endurance test, where the candidates had to keep up with the instructor running through a tunnel. Inside the tunnel, Gon met 𝐿𝐴, who was the only other kid besides him in that place. They quickly became good friends and decided to become hunters together. This first phase of the exam was really simple, but it eliminated the majority of the weak people who didn't have the guts to run through the dark tunnels and misty swamps. During this test, Gon also changed a lot as he realized that a hunter's life was filled with death at every step. After successfully completing a few more tests, Gon and the other candidates were tasked with stealing badges from each other, and if they managed to get at least 2 of them, they would pass the test. This was the first time we saw Gon struggle, as he went up against Hisoka, an interesting guy who had questionable taste in kids. This was the part of the story where Gon showed just how smart and quick thinking he was, as he instantly came up with a plan to steal Hisoka's badge without fighting him. You see, while Hisoka was locked in a battle, Gon managed to sneak toward him and fish away his badge using his fishing rod from afar. After stealing the badge, Gon tried to run away, but he stumbled and had both badges stolen by another candidate. At this point, Gon was convinced that his journey was over, but unexpectedly, Hisoka appeared holding 3 badges in his hands. He gave Gon 2 of the badges, including his own, and told him that it was a reward for being able to steal his badge earlier. Gon wanted to return them because he didn't feel worthy, but Hisoka punched him straight in the face. He then told Gon that if he ever got strong enough to punch him back, he would happily take his badge. Now, only the final test remained, which was a non-lethal tournament where participants had to make their opponent surrender. However, if they kill their opponent for any reason, they would fail. In this round, Gon was matched against Hanzo, a powerful ninja warrior. And despite everything Gon had learned during the exams, he was easily one-shotted by Hanzo, realizing just how big the gap between him and someone strong actually was. However, Hanzo couldn't pass until Gon officially surrendered, and this was where we saw Gon's determination and will on full display. Despite being completely outmatched, Gon refused to surrender, which led to him getting beaten up by Hanzo for the next 3 hours. Even when Hanzo threatened to cut off Gon's legs, which would prevent him from ever being a hunter, Gon still didn't budge. Not actually wanting to kill a kid, Hanzo eventually gave up and surrendered. And with this, Gon became a pro hunter. There are still 5 forms left, and let's continue with pro hunter Gon. After recovering for a bit, Gon felt strong enough to go and rescue 𝐿𝐴, who was taken back home by his brother 𝐿𝐵𝐼. 𝐵𝐸𝐴 and 𝐬𝐬 accompanied Gon to the 𝗁𝐷𝐾 family mansion, where the trio had to open a massive stone door that weighed 2 tons. They quickly realized they weren't strong enough to do it, so they trained hard for 20 days before finally becoming strong enough to open the doors. Afterward, they were led to the servant quarters where they met the family's butler, Goto. Goto promised to let Gon meet 𝐿𝐴 as long as he could beat him in a coin toss game. Goto's movements were very fast, and he even cheated by throwing the coin to a servant behind Gon's back. However, at this point, after passing the hunter exam, Gon's instincts had improved a lot, and he was easily able to guess where the coin was. Goto deemed Gon worthy of being Killua's friend, and the two eventually reunited. At this point, Gon wanted to find Hisoka, as he felt strong enough to return the favor now. Kurapika reminded Gon that he heard Hisoka mention he would be heading to York New City. Killua also mentioned that there was a Heaven's Arena in York New City, which was the perfect place for them to train while also earning some money. And this leads us to one of Gon's biggest power boosts in the entire series, Nengon. Gon and Killua soon arrive at the Heaven's Arena, where they learn that Hisoka was also one of the combatants there, but to reach him, they would need to climb the first 200 floors of the arena. Floor by floor, Gon and Killua started smashing their way toward the top. This continued until Killua met Zushi, who, despite being just another kid like them, had a mysterious, strong aura. Eventually, Gon and Killua reached the 200th floor and met Hisoka, whose aura was so strong that the duo literally froze in place. This was where they realized that if they wanted to become stronger, they needed to master this power too. So they soon met Wing, Zushi's master. Although Wing didn't initially want to teach them, he eventually gave in and started telling them about the mysterious power called Nen. Basically, Nen is a power that a person can use to strengthen themselves or their attacks. Wing then explained the 4 main ways of Nen. The first one is Ten, which shrouds a person with aura and maintains it around their body. Then there's Zetsu, which shuts off all the aura emanating from the user, making a person nearly invisible to other Nen users. Next is Ren, which allows a person to refine their aura to strengthen their attacks. And finally, Hatsu allows a person to perform special abilities that are unique to each individual. At this point, Gon and Killua finally realized why both Hisoka and Illumi were so strong. And it was because they already knew how to use Nen. They both begged Wing to teach them how to use Nen as well, but he told them that it would take months, if not years, to awaken it. However, since Gon and Killua were both so determined, Wing decided to use a dangerous technique to try and forcefully awaken their Nen. So he forcefully injected Nen aura into Gon and Killua's bodies, which opened their blocked off nodes, allowing Nen to freely flow through them. Wing then tested Gon to see which aura type he had, and it turned out Gon was an enhancer. In short, enhancers are able to greatly increase their physical attack and defense and are best suited for melee combat. Anyway, with their Nen powers unlocked, Gon and Killua passed through Hisoka's aura without any problem, which finally granted them entry to the 201st floor. Gon then had his first real fight against another Nen user named Guido. Now, although Gon knew Nen at this point, he had only scratched the surface of this mysterious power and still had a long way to go. We saw this clearly in his battle against Guido, who absolutely smashed our boy to the point that most of his bones were broken. Gon was then forced to recover for the next few months. But of course, he couldn't just sit around for 4 whole months doing nothing, so he went back to Wing once again and begged him to help him master his Nen powers. Wing already knew that Gon wouldn't take no for an answer, so he started teaching both him and Killua about Nen once again. In just a single month, Gon not only healed from all of his injuries, but also mastered the 4 fundamentals of Nen, leaving Wing speechless. After mastering Nen, Gon had a rematch with Guido, and this time, it was Guido who got blown away by Gon's superior Nen control. After beating Guido, Gon finally challenged Hisoka, who accepted the duel. Now, although Hisoka was clearly on a different level compared to Gon, Gon wasn't planning to give up. So he came up with a plan to create some rubble and then mask his aura using Nen. The plan worked, and Gon completely surprised Hisoka by punching him straight in the jaw. Even though Gon eventually lost, he earned Hisoka's respect, who acknowledged just how far Gon had grown in such a small amount of time. After the battle against Hisoka, Gon and Killua returned to Gon's hometown. There, he learned from his aunt that his father, Ging, had left behind a box for him, which she hid until he officially became a hunter. Gon opened the box using Nen, and inside it was a recording of Ging, who talked about his journey and some other stuff. However, aside from the recording, Gon also discovered a game cartridge named Greed Island. Killua then used his connections to learn more about Greed Island and found out that a super rich man was hosting an event where a few selected candidates would play the game, and the winner would be rewarded with 50 million jennies. So Killua and Gon decided to participate in the event, as it was their only lead to finding Gon's dad. They soon arrived at the Southern Peace Auction, where they met 𝐵ADERA, the multi-billionaire who wanted to hold the Greed Island tournament. To qualify as candidates, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA had to show their Nen abilities, but since they were still beginners when it came to Nen, they were disqualified for not being able to meet the criteria. 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA were both frustrated by this, so they spent the next few days training their auras. And after putting in a ton of blood and sweat into their training, they improved a lot. You see, before this training, 𝐂𝐑's mastery over Nen was quite crude, as he wasn't properly using his enhancer attributes. However, after the training, 𝐂𝐑 realized how to properly control Nen and wrap it around his fists, which even allowed him to punch through walls. With their enhanced auras, they both passed the qualification test with ease, and 𝐵ADERA gave them access to the game. So, after inputting a wisp of their Nen into the game console, they both got teleported to Greed Island. There are still 3 insane forms left to cover, and the last one is absolutely insane, but for now, let's continue with Advanced Nen 𝐂𝐑. Once on the island, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA learned a few rules of the game. First, all the players who died in the game would die in real life as well. Also, in order to finish the game, a person needed to complete a set of 100 cards. To find some cards, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA started roaming around the island, where they came across various opponents who were so strong that 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA had no option but to run away. This eventually led them to meet Biscuit, a woman with 40 years of experience in Nen training. After witnessing her superior control over Nen, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA realized just how weak they actually were compared to real Nen masters. Biscuit also noticed that they both had a lot of potential, so she decided to teach them how to use their Nen more efficiently. This was where 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA learned the advanced concepts of Nen, like �YO, where a user puts aura onto their eyes to enhance their vision and sight. Aside from this, she also taught them the concept of merging basic fundamentals of Nen to give birth to advanced Nen techniques. One of the techniques they learned here was an advanced form of Ten known as 𝐻U, which allows the user to enshroud an object with Nen, making it more sturdy and dangerous. 𝐂𝐑 practiced this technique by digging an entire mountain with a shovel, using nothing but 𝐻U to enhance the shovel. This type of training proved to be extremely tough for 𝐂𝐑, but it also led to his Nen becoming far more refined than before. Then 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA also learned another advanced Nen technique called Ken, which is an advanced defensive technique that provides protection from strong Nen attacks. The last advanced technique Biscuit taught the duo was Ryu, whose entire purpose is to distribute aura in variable percentages to different body parts, depending on the opponent and the flow of the battle. For example, when a person wanted to attack, they could distribute most of their aura into their fist while still keeping enough around the body for defense. Anyway, to learn Ryu, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA had to master all of the previous advanced Nen techniques, as without them, they wouldn't have been able to control their aura in such a refined manner. Ryu was insanely hard to master, so Biscuit spent the next 2 weeks sparring with them and correcting their mistakes through combat. After these training sessions, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA were both much stronger than before. However, there was still one thing 𝐂𝐑 was missing. You see, all the other pro hunters had special moves of their own, while 𝐂𝐑 was still stuck with basic aura techniques. So he decided to lock in and spend some time creating his first ever signature move. After hours upon hours of reflection, 𝐂𝐑 finally came up with an idea: rock, paper, scissors. Now, hold on. Don't be so quick to judge. Although the technique's name sounds way too childish, trust me, this move is no joke. Basically, 𝐂𝐑 split his signature move into 3 different styles. First was his core enhancer style, Rock Punch, where he shrouded his fist with aura and enhanced it. The more 𝐂𝐑 accumulated his aura into his fist, the stronger the Rock Punch became in the end. The second style was Scissors, which was a bit different, as 𝐂𝐑 used transmutation aura to make scissors from his middle and index fingers. This move was useful against opponents who were normally immune to blunt damage. And finally, the third style was Paper, where 𝐂𝐑 emitted an aura wave from his hand, used specifically for long-range attacks. After developing his own special attacks, 𝐂�N's training phase was officially over, so he and 𝐾𝐿UA decided to focus on beating the Greed Island game. One by one, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA faced various opponents and completed different side quests to earn as many game cards as possible. During these side quests, 𝐂𝐑 and 𝐾𝐿UA came across Hisoka, who was surprised after seeing how much 𝐂𝐑 had grown since they last met. However, despite usually being enemies, 𝐂𝐑 and Hisoka were actually forced into an alliance to beat one of the toughest opponents in the game, �RAZOR, who was also one of the game masters. To defeat �RAZR, 𝐂𝐿 and his team just had to beat him in a dodgeball match. Sounds simple, right? Well, not exactly. Because in this game of dodgeball, all the players were allowed to use their Nen abilities. If it had been before the training phase, 𝐂𝐿 and 𝐿𝐴 would have lost the game instantly. However, after getting trained by 𝐵𝑖𝑠𝑐𝑖 for a month, and with Hisoka on their side, their odds of winning became much better. The game started with �RAZR dominating 𝐂𝐿's team, who struggled to dodge and reflect his attacks. This made 𝐂𝐿 realize that if they didn't cooperate with each other, they wouldn't be able to beat �RAZR. So, even though Hisoka was a creep and 𝐂𝐿 wanted to have nothing to do with him, he decided to work together with him to combine their signature moves and land one solid hit on �RAZR. To do this, 𝐂𝐿 charged his rock punch and threw the ball toward �RAZR at maximum speed. �RAZR easily deflected the ball, but this made him fall right into Hisoka's trap. Hisoka then used his bungee gum ability as a slingshot, absorbing the impact and sending the ball back at even higher speed. �RAZR barely managed to block this, but the impact was enough to push him beyond the white line, eliminating him from the game. �RAZR then handed over his cards to 𝐂𝐿 and also told him everything that he knew about his father. Here, 𝐂𝐿 learned that 𝐿 once brought him to Greed Island when he was just a baby. After saying farewell to �RAZR, 𝐂𝐿 started looking for the last few remaining cards and soon met Genthru, an evil player who had been killing others and stealing their cards. 𝐂𝐿 defeated Genthru using Rock Punch and gained all of the cards that he had stolen from other players. This also completed 𝐂𝐿's full set of 100 cards, making him the official winner of Greed Island. As a reward, 𝐂𝐿 and his team got the chance to select a few items from the game to bring into the real world. One of the items 𝐂𝐿 chose was a card that allowed him to teleport to any one of the players in the Greed Island database. 𝐂𝐿 chose this card because he saw a player by the name of Nig in the game files, which sounded a lot like his father, 𝐿. So 𝐿 used this card, and it teleported him and 𝐿𝐴 to a random location far away in a forest. There, he met 𝐿, a disciple of 𝐿's father, who had spent some time with 𝐿 when he was little. 𝐿 was happy to see 𝐿, and after a long conversation, he told him that he was there on a mission to investigate a species called chimera ants, who came from a place known as the Dark Continent. 𝐿 and 𝐿𝐴 decided to accompany 𝐿 on his mission, but this was where everything started to fall apart for 𝐿. Before we cover 𝐿's strongest form in the entire show, let's first quickly go over Dark Aura 𝐿. 𝐿 and 𝐿𝐴 accompanied 𝐿 on his mission to find chimera ants and, if possible, quickly exterminate them. However, things didn't go well for our heroes, as out of sheer coincidence, the chimera ant queen got her hands on a human and was able to give birth to ants with humanoid features, but the strength of various other species. The chimera ant queen then sent these new soldiers to scout the area and bring more humans for her. This was where 𝐿 and the boys had their first encounter with the chimera ants. These humanoid ants were very strong, but not strong enough to beat pro hunters who knew how to use Nen. So, after suffering a defeat at the hands of the trio, the chimera ants ran away and hid in their nest until they could recover. However, letting the ants escape turned out to be a terrible mistake for the trio, as this led to the ants discovering Nen, which made them much stronger than before. Anyway, soon, the ant called Pito was born, and she headed out to find humans with Nen aura to feed to her queen. She then encountered 𝐿 and his group, and they were all completely shaken by her ridiculous Nen aura. 𝐿 was the first one to react to her attacks, but this came at a cost, as he immediately lost his arm. 𝐿 went berserk after seeing 𝐿 injured, but before he could do anything reckless, 𝐿𝐴 knocked him out and brought him to safety. Of course, 𝐿 had to stay behind and sacrificed himself to let them escape. 𝐿 wanted to immediately go back to the chimera ants' territory, but the Hunter Association didn't allow them, saying that they were too weak. So, to earn a place on the team, 𝐿 begged 𝐵ISCUIT to train him once again. 𝐵ISCUIT agreed after sensing 𝐿's malicious aura, which could become a problem for him if not controlled. From there, 𝐵ISCUIT trained 𝐿 and 𝐿𝐴 for a whole month, forcing them to face other pro hunters in combat until they were able to prove themselves worthy of joining the extermination team. After a full month of intense training, 𝐿 and 𝐿𝐴 proved themselves to NetherRealm, who gave them permission to join the team. Soon, 𝐿 was able to find 𝐿, but learned that Pito had turned him into a puppet and that he no longer had a soul. 𝐿 almost lost it after learning this, but he still didn't want to accept that 𝐿 was truly dead. So he decided to wait and have Pito fix him. Although he didn't break completely, this discovery made Gon fall even deeper into despair, with his aura turning dark and gloomy, scaring his companions. The dark aura was fueled by Gon's emotions, which made his Nen abilities many times stronger than before. But it also made him far less empathetic, as he didn't even mind killing an innocent person as long as he could revive Kite. Still, Gon held himself together with a slight hope that Kite could actually be saved, but this wasn't gonna last for long. Adult Gon. Soon, the day of the ant extermination arrived, and Netero soon signaled Gon that he was free to take on Pitou. So, Gon rushed after Pitou, who was busy healing Komugi, a blind girl that the king had taken a liking to. This was where we saw Gon's descent into darkness, as he didn't even care if Komugi lived or not, since he wanted Pitou to heal Kite first. Pitou begged Gon to give her 1 hour to heal Komugi, as she couldn't let her king down. Gon eventually agreed to give her an hour, but warned her that if she couldn't fulfill her promise, he wouldn't hesitate to kill Komugi. After waiting for an hour, Gon had had enough, so he turned to Pitou and ordered her to heal Kite. However, it was here that Pitou revealed the truth to him. Kite had been dead all along and couldn't be revived. At this point, the last thing holding Gon back from completely plunging into darkness broke. Consumed by grief, guilt, and anger, Gon decided to sacrifice everything for one thing: to kill Pitou and avenge Kite. So, the Nen vow transformed Gon into his adult form, which was basically the peak he would have reached at some point in life. This came at the cost of his future potential though, as once the transformation wore off, Gon wouldn't be able to use Nen ever again. After transforming into an adult, Gon's height increased dramatically and his body mass grew with it. He also grew extremely long hair, which floated upward just like the flow of his aura. At this point in the story, Gon was among the strongest characters in the series, maybe even the strongest. Even Pitou was terrified after witnessing Gon's transformation, as his power rivaled that of her king. This was where she realized that she had to take Gon out immediately. However, Gon had nothing left at this point, and his sole purpose was to kill Pitou and avenge Kite. So he put all of his strength into a rock punch that went right through Pitou's head. The battle was completely one-sided from the start, and Pitou just couldn't match Gon's raw power. After killing her, Gon had already exhausted all of his energy, so he crumbled back into his usual form. This also left him vulnerable to all the dark energy that he had been holding back, which started eating him from the inside. Gon somehow survived this, but ended up in a coma, barely alive. Killua eventually managed to bring Gon back with the help of his sister, Luca, who had a mysterious being inside her. However, despite her healing Gon back to normal, she couldn't return his Nen powers, as he had sacrificed them as part of his Nen vow. But Gon didn't really care about it. He had only learned Nen to find his dad anyway, and now his dad was back at the Hunter Association, so he could just go and meet him. And with this, Gon's journey was finally completed.